Hey folks, thought I'd let you see what I really look like at the end of the day before I actually comb my hair. So, alas, we're going to be listening to The Prince Warriors and the Swords of Rima, Volume 3 by Priscilla Shirer, Chapter 11, New Developments. As soon as Xavier and Evan walked through the door of the house, Evan zoomed past his mom, who was sitting in the living room watching TV, and went straight into the kitchen. "Mom, is there any food?" he yelled, hoping his mom could hear him. His morning of sword fighting had made him really hungry. There was no answer. Evan opened the refrigerator door. Nothing looked instantly edible. Lots of Thanksgiving leftovers in little plastic containers. "Lunch isn't for another hour," said Xavier, coming into the kitchen. "You ate 4 donuts this morning. How can you still be hungry?" "I'm starving now." "Well, then have some cereal." Evan headed for the pantry. Xavier decided to go up to his room to look up some stuff on his computer. He liked to look up stuff he didn't understand. His dad had taught him to do that whenever he was stuck on something, and it had just become a habit. As soon as they had gotten back from the mountain of Rima, Xavier had looked up the word Rima. It was the Greek word for breath. That made sense, since the mist that came from the mountain was the breath of the source. He had wanted to look up Chris, but he had no idea how to spell it. With a C or a K? With an I or a Y? Ruach hadn't told him that. He had tried all different ways, but hadn't found anything that seemed right. Maybe Chris was something that only existed in a Hortus. Right now, he was interested in finding out more information about sword fighting. Rook was an amazing fighter. He showed Xavier and Finn a lot of cool moves, but Rook told them he had never fought a black dragon himself, although he had seen them plenty of times. Rook had told him that the black dragon's armor was so thick that a single sword blow wouldn't kill it. Rook thought it would take at least a dozen swords to bring down one dragon, but even he wasn't totally sure. Xavier knew there were a lot of online sites devoted to dragon slaying, and even though they were all made up, he wondered if there might be some useful information he could take into a real battle, if he ever had to face one of those monsters himself. On his way up the stairs, Xavier passed by the living room and saw his mom still sitting in front of the television, staring intently at the screen. He thought it was strange that she hadn't answered Evan when he called. "Hey, Mom," said Xavier. No response. He spoke louder. "Mom, we're home." She glanced over at him. "Oh, hey, baby," she said, returning to the screen. "Have you seen this?" "What is it?" Xavier asked, sat down beside her on the couch. It was a news program. The video footage was an aerial view from a helicopter, showing a gigantic boulder sitting in the middle of a runway at the airport. There was a passenger plane parked at an odd angle beside it, as if it had nearly crashed into it. The boulder looked to be at least as long as the plane and twice as tall. The area around it was taped off with yellow police tape, and people in hazmat suits aimed strange-looking instruments at it. Much farther away, news vans and police cars were parked with lights flashing. The caption on the screen read, "Giant boulder appears on airport runway. Flights delayed for hours." The TV reporter was talking excitedly, waving one arm in the direction of the humongous rock. Officials are stumped as to what sort of rock this is. There is some speculation that it might be of alien origin, although there is no evidence that the object fell to Earth from the outer space. "It's so strange, isn't it?" said Mrs. Blake. "Right in the middle of the airport. Thank goodness it didn't fall on any planes." Xavier swallowed hard. He knew what that rock was. He'd seen more than one of them before. A skypod, one of the large floating objects that dotted the skies of a Hortus. He also knew what it contained. Ents, thousands of Ents, trapped by the Prince Warriors. The news reporter was still talking when the camera switched to a shot inside the airport, showing people being loaded onto buses, looking extremely unhappy. Dozens of flights have been delayed as the airport had to be completely shut down until it can be confirmed that this object is not a threat. Hundreds of people have been evacuated to local hotels, where they will have to stay until they get word that the airport has reopened. Even if it does, there is likely no chance that this huge rock can be moved off the runway quickly. Xavier excused himself and went into the kitchen where Evan was wolfing down a bowl of cereal. "You need to see this," he said, grabbing Evan by the arm and dragging him into the living room. Evan, still complaining about being separated from his food, went quiet as he watched the news show. Finally, Mrs. Blake turned off the TV. "Well, I guess the experts will figure it out," she said, seeing the worried expressions on the boys' faces. "I didn't mean to scare you. Evan, are you all right?" Evan nodded mutely. "Well, you boys need to clean up your rooms and take showers. I'll get some lunch together. How about hot turkey sandwiches?" She went into the kitchen. Evan and Xavier sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen. "A sky pod," Evan whispered, "full of ants." "Yeah," Xavier said, "but it's impossible. A sky pod couldn't come to Earth." "Maybe it could." Xavier looked at his little brother. "How?" "Rue said there would be consequences." "Consequences? What are you talking about?" Evan took a deep breath, summoning the courage to tell his brother the truth. "Xavier, I really wanted to open my locked room, you know, the rooms in the cave that we saw when we first got our armor. I didn't understand why it was taking so long for Rue to let us open it. And I found the key and, I took it." Xavier's mouth dropped open. "You took it?" Evan nodded. "I was just going to open the door and take a peek inside just to see what was in there, and then put the key right back. But somehow or other, I didn't get a chance, and then what? Then we came back to Earth." Xavier's gaping mouth closed. "You brought the key to Earth?" "Yeah, I knew it was against the rules that Rue gave us. We aren't supposed to bring anything back from Horritos to Earth, but it was sort of an accident. But you fixed it all, right? I mean, you're the one who opened the Quarton and stopped the unseen invasion of the rec center, so everything was fixed, right?" "Not exactly. Rue said there are always consequences for every action, sometimes even after we make things right." Evan pointed to the blank TV screen. "I'm wondering if this is it. That sky pod probably came through the portal I opened." Evan's head dropped, tears forming in his eyes. "It's all my fault." Xavier wanted to be mad. Evan was always getting them into trouble. His goofing off on the mountain of Rima had awakened those angry trees. Now this. A portal open. Sky pods falling to Earth. Xavier liked rules, and he was good at following them, but Evan never thought things through. Now he was making them all suffer. It was just too much. But seeing Evan's tears, knowing how badly he felt about all that had happened, Xavier couldn't be angry with him. He sighed, putting an arm around his brother. "Look, Van, it's okay. I mean, it will be okay. Ruach will fix it. And as long as no one messes with the sky pod, the Ents won't be able to get out." "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure, I guess. Don't worry, everything's going to be fine." Evan wiped his tears. "I sure hope so." "Let's go get some lunch," said Xavier, coaxing him up. "No, thanks," said Evan. "I'm not hungry anymore." The kids returned to the wreck early the next morning for more sword fighting lessons. Mr. J.R., Rook, and Grandpa Tony focused on forger fighting this time. As Evan pointed out yesterday, Mr. J.R. began, forgers don't fight with swords. Their mission is to grab and hold and turn you into metal. In order to kill a forger, you have to go straight through its chest or cut off its head. This is easier said than done, since the forgers are a whole lot bigger than you are, and they have massive arms. If you go for the legs, you might be able to knock them over so you can thrust the sword through. Remember, forgers are not flesh and blood. They are not humans, only metal. Flesh and blood? Asked Brianna. I got an instruction on my phone about that this morning when I woke up. Here it is. Do not fight flesh and blood. Fight the darkness in the unseen world. Exactly. Remember that. Stand your ground. Be brave. Mr. J.R. and Rook demonstrated a forger attack, with Mr. J.R. pretending to be a forger. The kids thought it was hilarious, even though Mr. J.R. was trying to be real scary. Then they broke up into groups again and practiced forger fighting techniques. During their break in the main room of the wreck, Brianna brought up the subject of the sky pods. They found 2 more, she said. One at the high school football field and one in the grocery store parking lot right in town. Oh no, said Ivy. More of them? It's an epidemic. They figured out the sky pods aren't bombs, said Xavier, who had been watching the news nonstop since the story broke. I've got to answer my phone.